Hi everyone, Dr. Doodle Dad here. Time for another one of my compilations. I hope you enjoyed the last one. I realised that it was very, very lengthy, but that's testament to all the work I've done in the last few years putting all this content on. So today we're going to be talking about how to be a better version of yourself. And this compilation is all the videos I've got about planning and trying to prioritise yourself and having good boundaries and things like that, and a whole bunch of life hacks in there. So sit back and enjoy the show. Nice.
Morning everyone, out for a cold water dip. There are many benefits to this which you can look up, but the primary one for me is that it burns off all my cortisol, and that means no matter what happens for the rest of the day, everything else feels easy. So here goes. Oh, jeez. What do you say, boys? Properly cold?
The sewage helps the microbiome.
Yes, yes, that was the sewage helps the microbiome. Oh, jeez. Right. After this, as I said, everything else is easy. Nice one. Morning everyone, out for a walk this morning. Going to be giving you a bit of a book review, and I've got 10 books that I think everyone should read. They're in no particular order, and they're actually not a top 10, just 10 that I like, and I'll maybe do another review with more. So stay tuned and I'll tell you what they are and what I took in terms of take-home messages from them. Right, so first book is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. That is a book about how we've become very, very entrenched in comfort, and the human brain does look for comfort whenever it can. In fact, 90% of all inventions in the last 30 years have been for human comfort. So what that has resulted in, actually, if you've ever seen that movie WALL-E, and all of those people are on that ship, the Axiom, up in space, and they don't do anything, they just float around on chairs that do everything for them. Well, we're sort of becoming that way. And anyway, I said I would tell you take-homes, not digress into Pixar movies. The take-home from that one is that he reckons we should, well, the story is basically about him doing a thing called a misogi, and a misogi has two parts to it. Number one is it should be very, very, very hard, and number two is you shouldn't die. But when you do something like that, it really does push the discomfort levels right up, and that's where we learn. We don't learn anything sitting on the couch with our feet up. We only learn when we're working hard and we're leaning into discomfort, and that's where you reach what's called the growth edge. And at that point you can peer over the edge and see, what can I learn here? So Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, definitely one. If you should probably start with it, actually, because a lot of what I talk about on this channel requires you to get up and do something. It requires, the phrase mood follows action, so it requires you to do something. A lot of what I ask people to do is hard work, and if you read that book, you'll understand why I'm trying to get you to do that hard work. So start with that one. Okay, next up is book number 2, which is Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. It's probably no secret to some of you out there that he's a bit of a hero of mine. He's like he's just a wise sage of a guy, and his book Finding Ultra is about his battle with cocaine and alcohol addiction, and how he ended up kind of at rock bottom, lost his law practice, was living in a studio apartment with no furniture, lost his marriage, fell apart, things like that, and he's come back from that and won double Ironman events, an event called the Ultraman. I think he might have won it twice, and he's since created this amazing following, this huge YouTube and podcast network of just brilliant advice and fantastic guests, and I'd definitely recommend you check them out. But the take home from that is anyone can change. It doesn't matter where you are just now in your life journey. You're not on train tracks. You're on a path through the woods, and you can change direction. You can take a different path. You don't have to stay where you are. So if he could do that, if he could get to where he was and get to where he now is, then I believe anyone can. So that's book number 2, Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. Okay, number 3 is The Attributes by Rich Diviney, or Diviney? He's an ex-Navy SEAL, and he created a thing called the Mind Lab to try and train Navy SEALs how to manage things when the going gets tough, because he had all these guys who should have been really good SEALs, but because on paper they were fantastic soldiers, but when it came to this Navy SEAL training, they couldn't do it, and they would bail out after a couple of weeks. And he realized that people have attributes, and he created, did I say it was called the Mind Gym? I think it was called the Mind Gym or the Mind Lab, and it was a way for people to look at their attributes and try and figure out what they could improve on. Now, the one to take home from that, because he's got, I think there's like 40 different attributes, but the one I took from that was accountability. And I have mentioned this lots of times before, we need to be really accountable for our behaviours and for our situation. We can't rely on others to fix it for us. We have to think, what's my role here? How can I be better? What could I do to improve my current situation and setup? And that's where I think accountability is really important, especially self-accountability. And I said it on another video recently, stop blaming the politicians and the healthcare service because you're unwell. If you've got lifestyle choices that have made you that way, try and see if there's something you could be doing, because it is a two-way street, and I'm sure there's plenty of medical people out there who'd be delighted to help you, but they also expect you to do some of the work. So anyway, accountability, book number 3, I think it's 3, The Attributes by Rich Diviney. Okay. Oh gosh, I'm in danger of saying okay all the time like Simon did on that Iron Man video, haven't I? Okay. Number 4, and I'm saying again all the time. I've been trying really hard not to say that. Anyway, number 4 is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. He was a monk for 3 years, and it talks about how he learned all his monkish behaviour, and there's quite a lot of tips in there on contentment and happiness and what have you. But the take home for me in that one was a thing called reverse envy. If you're upset because someone has something that you want and you don't have it, well, it's not very helpful to be envious or jealous of that. And in fact, the phrase is something like, if someone you love has something you want, would you take it away from them in the full knowledge that you would not have it? And the answer is usually no, because actually you're just being nasty. And if you want it, you have to go and get it yourself. You can't be upset with what other people have or what other folk have achieved. So Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. Right, number 5 is Born to Run by Chris McDougall. It is one of the best books I've ever read, and as soon as I read it, I think I was straight down the shoe shop buying running shoes. It is amazing. It's one of these books that you read and you think, oh my goodness me, I am so designed for running. Why? Well, I'm not designed for running, but genetically, as a species, we're designed for running. I'm kind of more designed for slobbing about and things. But anyway, that book is definitely worth reading. Right, sorry, I had to cut that short in like the quietest place in the local area, and I just bumped into someone who was looking at me like, what are you doing? Where was I? Yes, the Born to Run. So it's a wonderful book about an ultramarathon race between some ultramarathon superstars and a tribe called the Tarahumara tribe, who live in the Copper Canyons, I think, somewhere in South America. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. And he talks about the science behind running and how humans are definitely designed for it. So the take home from that is we should all be doing some kind of physical activity, and running, believe it or not, is probably one of the ones we could all do if we're capable. But even people who say they can't probably can. So besides, it's a good excuse to go and buy a pair of running shoes after you read that. So that's book number 5. Number 6 is... Oh, I forgot what number 6 is. Hold on. Right, just quick checking my notes there. Number 6 is Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Tuliken. It's recently come out, and it's a book about the world of ultra processed foods and all the things it does to us. I mean, there's not much to say about that one other than don't eat ultra processed foods. He talks a lot about why you shouldn't. And oh look who's there, who's walked into camera shot. Look at that. Hello. You're not ultra processed yet. If you're turned into some kind of salami or whatever, and that's pork, isn't it? And you'll be ultra processed. Anyway, so yeah, don't eat ultra processed food. There's a lot of evidence in there as to why it's bad for you, and it causes all kinds of problems. That's number 6. Right, number 7 is Finding the Scream by Johann Hari. This book it's really wonderful. It's a book about addiction, but it's told in a very different way, and it's not about people being addicted to the specific drug that they're on. It's more about the reasons why they've resorted to that. And if you fix that, then people are less likely to have issues of that kind. I think for me it's quite useful because you can... Oh, sorry, I just realised I'm walking past someone's house, so change direction so I don't have them in it. Where was I? Yes, I think you can... I mean, he's mostly talking about things like heroin and cocaine, things like that. But if you change that to whatever your vice is, whether it's online shopping or whether it's gambling or whether it's food or something like that, you can just make it about that as you're reading it and realise that you're doing those things because you're sad or you're upset or distressed or you've got poor coping strategies. And he does go into quite a lot of why people... Yeah, sorry, I was having a bit of a brain fart there because I suddenly was thinking about a different book that he wrote and I thought, oh, that's a bit similar. No, Lost Connections, yes, is the other book that I'm thinking of. So this one's supposed to be about chasing the stream, not Lost Connections. Anyway, he does cover a lot about what you can do to try and improve those addictive habits, if you like, and what governments and things can do. So definitely worth a read. Yeah, I think this is number 8. It's called The Way Out, and it's by a guy called Alan Gordon. It's a book about chronic pain, and he had back pain for a decade, and I don't think he's a doctor. I think he's like a PhD scientist, researcher or something, but he talks about this phenomenon called neuroplastic pain, which is what happens when you have chronic pain and it's been there for more than 3 months, and it's been really, really helpful. I had issues, as you'll have seen in a previous video, with my foot, which went on for almost 2 years, and basically I read that book and the pain just went away and it's never really come back. So that's the take home from that one, is that if you've had pain for more than 3 months, read that book, because he gives you lots of ways to try and actually alleviate your pain that don't require any medications, because at 3 months the medications are no longer really working. So that's that one. Okay, in at number 9, which is a bit of a left field edition, is one called Radical Alignment. Now, it's a very small book, but it's effectively a guide on how to have difficult conversations with people. And the two people that wrote it, Alex somebody and Bob somebody, sorry, I've completely forgotten, but it's two people that have written it. I'll put it here and then you'll see what it is. They have created this thing called an AIM, A-I-M, which stands for an all-in meeting, and you can download a PDF of how to do that. But basically this is what I want to talk about, this is why I want to talk about it, and this is when I want to talk about it. Oh, same to you. And it's a way of not having arguments. And my wife and I have used this for years now, and it's been very, very helpful. So that's book number 9. Okay, last book number 10 is The Body Keeps the Score, and this is by a guy called Basil van der Kolk. And Basil van der Kolk, yeah, so he's a psychiatrist. He retired. I think he's retired now, but he worked in Massachusetts for 30 years, and he does a lot of work on childhood trauma and transgenerational trauma and things like that. And effectively in that book he's saying, if you have things like depression, chronic pain, lots of other psychiatric illness, borderline personality disorder, things like that, it's probably down to the fact that you had a pretty terrible upbringing. And he talks about where that comes from. And I think most of us should read that book, because unfortunately a lot of us grew up with quite difficult things in our lives. So let's just leave it at that. And you should read that because it helps you understand where a lot of your issues might be coming from. And instead of looking for a psychiatric disease classification, maybe look at where it came from. And actually, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You can totally fix this. Now, he doesn't really go into how, but it does give you quite a good insight into why. And once you understand the why, you can begin to work on the how. So that would be my take home from that book. And yeah, really, it's a hard read. It's quite upsetting in places. I wouldn't suggest trying to read it in a oneer. That book is an adverse experience if you read it in a oneer. But over the space of a few weeks, you can really get some useful information out of that one. So there you go. That's book number 10. Hope that was helpful. I hope you found some useful tidbits there. I certainly try to get through as many of these kind of books as I can. Probably since I started this journey, read, close to 100 books, maybe more. And they've all been really useful. So maybe you can start with those 10. Not with number 10. that's not one to start with. Okay, take care. I'll see you in the next video.
Hello again, everybody, and thank you for dropping by. Today I'm talking about my morning routine, getting up at 5 a.m. and why. If you listened to last week's poem about being tired all the time, you'll see that part of the issue is that no bit of the day was mine. We feel the minutes just aren't enough and long constantly for our bed. But if you want some calm and solitude, then you must make the time instead. It might seem counterintuitive, but what I am trying to say is if you go to bed an hour earlier, you can get up an hour earlier each day. There are plenty of people touting this. It really isn't anything new, but I followed Hal Elrod's version, and today I'll explain this one to you. It's worth saying before the light bulb, when the sun went down we'd hit the hay, but now we find loads of reasons to stay up late which get in the way. Personally, I found the main excuse was FOMO, that ubiquitous fear of missing out. What would I miss with an early night? The actual answer was nout. So once I'd come to realise that, I set an alarm for when to go to bed and would leap out my pit really early, eager for my morning ritual instead. What did I do in this hour I had? Well, let's go through them one by one. You don't have to copy what I did, just mix it up and have some fun. I divided the hour into 6 lots of 10, and then I started the first with hydration. A glass of water and then a coffee. It really doesn't need an explanation. The next bit is really important, and that was to get outside. Even if it's cloudy, it's 50 times brighter than most light bulbs you have inside. When it was cold, I'd wrap up warm, and if there was a soggy downpour, I'd simply go into the garage and sit beside the open door. Early morning light, as I've previously said, sets you up for the day ahead, and it also starts a countdown timer that signals when it's time to go to bed. There's now 50 minutes or so left. What was the next thing I would do? Well, 10 minutes of holding plank position, which was more like 5 between me and you. After that ordeal was out the way, my body was now truly awake. So for the next 10 minutes, I used an app on my phone to meditate. This helped me to quiet my mind, bringing my thoughts down to the ground, removing the day ahead's anxiety, the effects of which were truly profound. 30 down with 30 to go. I then rein in my attitudes by writing down happy, caring thoughts in my journal full of gratitudes. These can really be anything at all, reflections of how you are content, or simply that you're glad it's not raining, perhaps reframing what you thought someone meant. Sometimes I write things about the kids, or stuff that makes me happy to be me. But other times it might be completely random, like the first sound I heard today was a bee. 20 left, and where has the time gone? By this point I feel the day's already won, so I'll get on to affirmations and explain how these are done. These are short statements I want to be true. Nothing daft like I will be thin, but achievable goals that I can make happen by drawing on what I have within. I used to make these unobtainable, with very low chance of success, and when those never manifested, I'd become very despondent, I confess. So now I pick small doable things that I can work on every day. It feels better to tick things off the list, and I'll continue to do them this way. Importantly, you have to read your list out. Do it with gusto and do it loud. You might feel a bit of a fool, but as they come true, you'll be proud. So that leaves me a final 10 minutes. And what can you do with this time? Well, this is my favourite section, the bit which is well and truly mine. Essentially, I use it for anything. Perhaps to write a few poetry words, or just sit contented and still, soaking up the dawn chorus from the birds. That's all there is to this practice. Will it work like it did for me? Well, try it out. You've nothing to lose, and you too can join the 5 a.m. society.
Are you having a crap time at work? That's a daft question, most of us are. If you are, perhaps you should stay tuned to today's video, because I'm going to go through a few things that you might find helpful that can probably, possibly turn that around. So stay tuned and we'll get started. Right, hi everyone. Out for a autumnal walk. It's getting a bit chilly actually, hence the new beanie. But as I said at the intro, sometimes work can feel a bit overwhelming, and we often adopt a thing called a victim-perpetrator mindset. And what that means is things are being done to you, or at least that's how it feels. So at my work at the moment, there are a lot of problems. They mainly revolve around finance, and it's something that we have no control over. I'll explain why in a minute. I'm on a busy road. I'm going to have to keep stopping the recording, but I'll explain in a minute what's happening and why. Right, so I'll put an article here somewhere here that was in the recent local papers just about what's going on at my work. But essentially, general practice is a bit of a weird model. You have one client, which is the local health board, and they determine how much they're going to pay you. So it's a bit like you've got a broken washing machine and you get a plumber around, or a washing machine white goods specialist to have a look at it, and he says, well, that'll cost £150 to repair, and you say, no, I'll pay you £12.50, like it or lump it. It doesn't work. But that's how it is in general practice. You've got basically one client, and in the NHS you're not really allowed to do private work or other work as a GP in your own practice, so no other form of income. And if they decide that they're going to cut what they pay you, or they're going to put prices up for your rent and things like that, you have no options other than to cut your services. And unfortunately that potentially puts people at risk. But there's not much you can do, because that's the way it is, and you just have to make the best of a bad situation. So in today's video, I'm going to talk a fair bit about things that might be affecting you at your work, and what could you be doing to try and help those. I don't know if any of you have heard of a guy called Ross Edgley, but the man's a lunatic in the best possible way. And a few years ago he decided he was going to swim around the whole of the UK, which I think took him something like 180 something days. He swam for 6 hours every 12 hours and spent the other 6 hours on a catamaran, and every 6 hours got back in the water, and essentially swam with the tide day after day after day. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, he contended with an awful lot of difficulty when he did that. And he ended up writing this book called The Art of Resilience. And one of his phrases in that is control the controllables. And that's what today's video is all about, is what can you control in your workplace to make things a bit better for you. Right, I'm going to use the example of where I am right now. I'm walking on a road. It's a tiny little B road, but it's really busy this morning, and I'm getting frustrated that all these people inconsiderately have decided to drive their cars on a Sunday morning where I'm trying to film a video. Now, not a one of them knows that I'm doing this, and none of them have decided this morning when they set their alarm to get out of bed, I better go and drive down that road just to annoy him. But that's what my brain is telling me. It's telling me, oh, these guys, they should know better, don't they know? Anyway, that's what happens in the work situation that I was describing there. So if you are having problems at your work, chances are, with the exception of a few difficult things like workplace bullying and things like that, chances are it's not about you, it's about other things, probably of which you have very little control. And maybe that does include things like bullies and people misbehaving. You can't really control them. All you can do is control your actions around them. And for the longest time I've been saying there are only two things you can control in the whole world. One is your feelings and one is your actions. And we'll go on to discuss the actions that you can take when you're in a working environment that's not feeling great. So I've told you all before many times, mood follows action. Said it lots. And if you act beaten, this is one I came up with this morning. If you act beaten, you'll get beaten. So part of the actions you need to take are the actions of someone who feels not beaten, not downtrodden. And you almost have to kid yourself into thinking, right, I can do better here. And funnily enough, you'll start to do better. So that would be my first point, is if you act beaten, you're not going to succeed. So try to think, I know I hate the phrase think positively, but know that you can do better and you'll do better. And on that note, the second point would be, what's your work ethic like? Because people always say things like they're trying their best. But your best is subjective. It's not objective. There's plenty of people you know probably, or people you've seen or heard of, who do way more than you do. They achieve a lot more. But they have exactly the same set of skills that you do. It's just that their ceiling of what they think their best is higher than yours, so they'll do more. So I actually think when you say you think you're doing your best, are you actually doing your best? Or could you raise that ceiling? So one thing I tell people to do before they start down the path of writing CVs and quitting and things like that is to get you don't even need to buy the book. You could just go online and look at a website called sparketype.com by a guy called Jonathan Fields. He runs a podcast called The Good Life Project. But the Sparketype questionnaire is... It's one of those personality questionnaires, but it's specifically for the workplace, and it'll give you one of 10 Sparketypes. Very clever, archetype, Sparketype. And that's your kind of primary thing you should be looking to do more of in the workplace. And it's all about doing more of the stuff that fills you up and less of the stuff that empties you, because unfortunately you still have to do some of that. But if you're more full with the good stuff, then the bad stuff doesn't feel so bad. So get a copy of you could get Sparked, which is the book, or you could alternatively just do it online at sparketype.com and see what you get for your Sparketype. So the next thing to do is to look for opportunities. Once you've done something like Sparketype, you'll find that there is actually opportunities for you to grow into areas of the working environment that you enjoy. I hate certain bits of running a GP practice, but there's other bits that I really do enjoy, and I didn't really understand that until I'd done some of this work. So I like to think of myself as the project guy. So if we're doing a new project, like a new website, or if there's some audit stuff that needs done, or if there's a prescribing bit of work, it's usually me that puts my hand up to do that stuff, because I know well, I don't know if I'm any good. I might be terrible at it. I do like doing it, so it's usually me that does that. But I wouldn't have known that. I also know when to sit on my hands and not put my hand up and end up doing bits of work that I can't stand, because I know that empties me way more than it does other people. So look for the opportunities, say yes to ones that you think would be useful for you, but that does require you doing a bit of work to know which opportunities fill you up. And when you've got those opportunities, work hard. Do it to the best of your ability, because sooner or later the big opportunity will appear. And if you just wing it, you won't do a good job. And people will stop offering you those opportunities because they think, well, you didn't do a good enough job last time. You say you like it, but you don't really do the work. So yeah, opportunities, take them, but make sure they're the right ones. And when you do them, work to the absolute maximum of your ability. Now, I mentioned things like Sparketype and doing a bit of self-awareness work. And I think that's the next bit that is definitely worth mentioning, which is, do the self-improvement work, do as much as you can, because you do need to be the best version of yourself in the working environment. And if you've got a lot of negative things going on, chances are you're not your best self. So you have to, again, I always say work hard, but you do have to put the work into yourself first. And that will help you, because when you do self-improvement work, you become more resilient. People don't really understand the word resilient. People think of resilience and they think of the word strength. But a Coke can is strong, but it's not resilient. It will never, ever return to its shape after you crush it. Whereas something like a rubber cup, or one of these plastic keep forever cup things, if you stand on that, it'll bend just like the Coke can does, but when you take your foot off it, it'll go back to its previous shape. And that is what resilience is. It's the ability to take a hit but then return to as good as you were before. So I think that's an important distinction between strength and resilience. They're not the same thing. And if you do all the good work, if you do the 6 pillar medicine stuff, you sleep well, you exercise regularly, you have a healthy diet, you've got good connections, you stay away from toxic substances and behaviours and things like that, then you'll be more resilient, which means when things go wrong at work, yes, it will feel rubbish, but your chances of recovering afterwards are higher, which is why I'm out doing this walk right now on a Sunday morning. And it's just so that tomorrow at work, on Monday, I can think, yeah, that's pretty bad here, but it's going to be the weekend soon and I can get out on another walk, or I can have my Wednesday night run, or do all these things. So do the self-improvement work, and with that will come some self-awareness also, and you'll know what makes you tick, and you'll know when things are not going well, that perhaps you're not doing all of those good things, and you'll become aware of it much faster, and therefore you can get back on it quickly. Yeah, so self-improvement work, very important. Okay, so the next thing to talk about is your attitude. And I don't mean bad attitude. You got a bad attitude, like they say in American TV shows. I think, didn't BA in BA Baracus stand for bad attitude? I think it did, having 1980s flashbacks there. But attitude is really important, and your attitude can be helpful or unhelpful, as with most things. So with a helpful attitude, if something's going wrong at work, you can actually sit with it for a while and go, what's the learning here? I don't feel great. Something must be happening. How can I minimize this next time? And actually stand at that growth edge and peer into the abyss and see where the learning can be had. In medicine, and I'm sure in many other environments, they do things called SEAs, which stands for significant event analysis. And a few years ago, they changed them to LEAs, which is a learning event analysis, and that's definitely a better title. And learning can become learning's very straightforward if you have a protocol like that, because all you need to do is go, what happened? Why did it happen? What did I learn? And what can I do differently next time? And if you've got something that's uncomfortable at work, do an LEA. And you might find the next time it happens, you've figured a way out or you figured a better way of managing it. So that's a bit about attitude. Now, a negative attitude might be a case of, I don't like that, I'm not doing any more of it. And you've maybe that is some learning, but you've perhaps pulled away from opportunity to learn a bit more about yourself or about the environment you're working in. So I would definitely advise that you don't do that. And an example of that might be that you're going to a wedding and you get into the wardrobe and you try on that shirt that's been at the back of the wardrobe for ages, and when you put that on, it doesn't fit. So what do? Well, you put it back in the wardrobe in the hope that one day it will fit, but generally you probably go and buy a new shirt, and that's the wrong attitude. The attitude should be, why does this not fit? And what can I do and what's within my power to try and change that? Okay, I've bought plenty of new shirts because the old ones don't fit. But still, I do still try. And I think that's important. A positive mindset, positive attitude is a lot more helpful than a negative one, even in the working environment. Okay, last up is integrity. What's integrity? Well, integrity is who you are. Integrity is your values, your morals, things like that. And I definitely recommend people do a thing called values work. Now, you can actually download, no, I don't think you can download, but you can buy a deck of cards. I'm sure you can download a list of values. But what I did is, there's a woman called Lisa Congdon. I think she's an American illustrator and she does a lot of this work. But you can actually buy a deck of cards from her, which I think has about 72 different values, and you can read what they all are, and you put them all in order, and then you take the top 10 and then you put those in order, and then you take the top 3, and those are your top 3 values, and they're things that you should live by. So my 3, I think, were family, courage, and creativity. And when you've done that work, it's really useful, because when you're in any environment, whether it's work or not, you can quickly determine if you're actually living an aligned value, or if you're actually the jobs you're doing and the work you're doing it just doesn't feel right, and you sometimes don't understand why. But if you understand your values and your value alignments, you might realize that what you're being asked to do, or what bit of work you're doing, doesn't align with your values, and therefore that needs to go. And you need to look for, back to the opportunities thing, opportunities that align with your values. Something weird happened in that last clip. I think I pressed the record button twice. I was blabbing on about values and then it just stops. Anyway, I think what I was going to say is I hope some of that's been useful. It's probably felt a bit ranty. I did have some notes on scrumpled bits of paper. I felt a wee bit like Eminem in that movie 8 Mile, when he's on the bus scribbling lyrics. In fact, he was wearing a beanie just like this one. But I think it is important that we do this hard work, because in the situation that we've got at work, my hope is that we just hold fast and that things get better in the coming weeks and months. And if this ever happens to us again, well, we'll be all the more resilient for this episode we're going through just now, and we'll take the next one on the chin like we've done with this one. So do that hard work. I hope there's some good information in there for you today. Please leave comments below if you've got any suggestions on how this could be done better. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Nice.
Hi everyone. Have you ever aspired to do something and unfortunately you've failed? Have you even found that sometimes you never managed to start in the first place? So today I'm going to show you one way that you can really smash those goals, and I promise you it will work every time. I've decided to sign up for another Ironman. What is an Ironman? Well, it's a type of triathlon where you swim 2.4 miles in the sea, you then ride your bike 112 miles, and then you run for 26.2 miles, and you have to do all of that in under 16 hours. Sounds terrible. And yes, it maybe even sounds impossible. But if a fat, middle-aged man like myself can do it,
then so can you. Now, it's perhaps not an Ironman that you're going to be using as your goal, but there will be something that you've wanted to do or something you've wanted to achieve and you've just never got round to it because you haven't planned. I realise you've got jobs and commitments and kids and all of those other things which we all do, but it's entirely possible to achieve what you want to achieve by doing a little bit of work at the beginning. So how did I do my last Ironman? Well, it was entirely through planning. I wrote out my plan, I was self-accountable, and I was committed to doing what the plan said. When you write something down, you are 40% more likely to make it happen. So, as I said in the New Year's resolution video, what you do with this is you start small. This plan I'm writing right now for the upcoming Ironman looks terrible. It looks absolutely awful. But if you look closely at the starting few weeks, you'll see I'm actually not writing much more than I'm already doing. And slowly it begins to build from there. Now, it's really important to enjoy the journey. So don't do things too quickly. Just slowly build and stay consistent, and you'll find that actually things begin to fall into place quite quickly. What I also suggest people do is use visualization. Now, what is visualization? Well, humans are not very good about thinking into the distant future. Yes, you can think about later on today, you can probably think about tomorrow or maybe even next week, but generally you can't imagine where things will be 6 months from now. So spend a little bit of time, maybe every day, maybe every week, just imagining where you would like to be 6 months from now, what you think things will be like, what you think you might look like, what you think your career might be doing. And if you do that on a regular basis, you can begin to see how things might turn out if you stay consistent. It's really quite an indescribable feeling to know that you've worked that hard and you've stayed accountable and then you've reached your target, and the visualization will help with that. So please do spend a little bit of time doing that as often as you can. And once you've achieved your goal, once you've crossed the finish line, figuratively or literally, reward yourself. You know, give yourself a big pat on the back, get that thing that you thought, I was going to treat myself to when I crossed that finish line. But don't stop there. The finish line is important, but the journey far outweighs that. It's much better to say I'm a triathlete than to say I've done an Ironman. That really just ends the journey at that point. So build from this success and continue to plan and continue to make yourself accountable to the next step in your journey. You can do this for anything. You could do it for weight loss, you could do it for your career plan, you can do it for exercise, your side hustle, an entrepreneurial pursuit. It really doesn't matter. Just find something you want to achieve, make a plan, be accountable, and it will happen. I promise. See you next time.
Hello everyone, climbing up some Monroes today. I want to ask you, how many videos or podcasts have you heard or watched where you see a celebrity saying, oh my god, my life was so awful with all that money, and now that I've changed and I do hold some things, my life's so much better. And what they're saying is the money didn't bring them happiness. And I think that could be sort of extrapolated out to the fact that external things don't bring you happiness. It's all about finding internal happiness and contentment. And as the writer Robert M. Pirsig wrote, now he's the guy that wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, a very famous saying in that book, which is, the only Zen you'll find at the top of the mountain is the Zen you take with you. Nice.
Do you have someone in your life who is on a ton of different pills that they've been encouraged to take every day for all their various medical ills? They swallow tablets to control their sugars and capsules to improve their mood, inhalers to help with their smoker's lung, all because they've been told they should. perhaps there might be another way, before things get completely out of hand, where they can get back some control. Let me help you to understand. You see, in this modern day and age, our biggest killers aren't infections or injuries like cuts and breaks. We've cured those with surgery and injections. Now the things that do the most harm, which I'm afraid you're going to hate, is what you drink and what you smoke, sedentary lives, and what you put on your plate. That, along with harmful behaviours and the ultra-processed food machine, lack of sleep and too much stress. Listen on and you'll see what I mean. There are 6 pillars of well-being, which we should all know about. And before we start on medications, we should feel confident to ask about. The first pillar is positive mental well-being. Do you find contentment in your day? Do you have purpose and reasons to get up, and a feeling of endless curiosity? The second is all about our nutrition. Whole food plant-based is best for you. Try to avoid meat and also dairy, and anything tasting too good to be true. Thirdly, tell me how you are moving. Are you always active or mainly sat? You don't have to go run a marathon, just move a bit more than where you're at. The fourth pillar is concerning sleep. Is it restorative and do you get enough? Your brain heals itself when you snooze. Poor nights make your daytime rough. In at 5 is avoiding toxic substances. This is obvious, can't you tell? But it also includes harmful behaviours. Ultra-processed foods could go here as well. The 6th pillar involves your connections. Do you have good social interactions? Do the people in your life fill you up and not drive you to distraction? So if you master these well-being aspects, you should start to see your health improve. Your need for medications might be less, and some you might be able to remove. You see, I don't want to prescribe you drugs, but it's often all that I can do because these pillars are usually omitted when discussing what's going wrong with you. So I'm going to make you all a deal. If you're completely on the ball with each of these 6 lifestyle pillars, prescription meds, you can have them all. Joking aside, medications have a place. I'm not telling you to flush them away. Just think about the way you live. Are you healthy? Is all I want to say. So if you think you can improve yourself or help others to give it a go, start a conversation about well-being, and those pills might reduce. You never know. Some time back I decided to go out for a run. Not a tiny single part of it was even remotely any fun. My feet were very sore and my breathing really burned. My heart was forever screaming, and to make it stop I yearned. I only managed to get to the far end of my street before I had to give up, and I felt completely beat. Why do people do this? They must be completely mad, and yet they seem to wear a smile and look exceptionally glad. A few days drifted by, and I decided to try once more, despite my last appalling attempt ending as a mess upon the floor. I laced up my old sneakers and went back out to the road, and within a few short minutes my legs began to explode. I thought I should give up. I thought that I was done. I'd convincingly had enough before I'd even begun. But then I read about the cycle of change that helps make good habits a bit more long range. First comes pre-contemplation, where I'd been for many years, not aware of my bad habits and not addressing all my fears. The next stage I would find out was where I would contemplate that I had got far too fat, that I had eaten too much cake. Action came in a close third, where I was last week
when I put on my trainers and tried to run along the street. But where I was now was a sidestep perhaps, sitting feet up on the couch. I was deep in my relapse. But now I was enlightened, so despite hating the burn, I got my mind back on task and to action I would return. It was going to be a battle, one I wasn't planning to lose, and preparation gave me an excuse to buy some shiny new shoes. Just a wee side note, and it's worth more than my life, I actually bought 3 pairs, so please don't tell my wife. So I did the couch to 5k and change started to be seen. I was no longer breathing fire and my muscles became slightly lean. Mental well-being began to improve and I slept much better too. It seems that I was starting to become a runner through and through. Rich Roll is a hero of mine, whose statesmood follows action, and finally for me it seemed this thought was gaining traction. So with this good habit formed, I signed up for a race, a local full marathon, aiming for better than last place. I drew myself a running plan and had a few months to train, but unhelpful thoughts and goals started to fill up my brain. What position would I place? Could I get a faster time? Would it be possible to beat a certain friend of mine? Soon I realised this race was just a special occasion. The running was a journey, the finish line not the destination. But the training went quite well, despite an injury or 3, and waiting with 10,000 others on the start line, there was me. It was a grueling day out, and the sun shone in the sky. Sweat streamed, muscles cramped, and I often wanted to cry. But I thought of those early days and the ongoing cycle of change, and all that really hard work to get my brain to rearrange. I listened to other runners, stopped in their sore tracks, cursing their aching legs, chests mimicking heart attacks. But I knew I was a runner, and my courage began to grow. After all, action leads to thoughts, which leads to feelings, don't you know? Soon the finish line was in sight, and the crowd started to roar, my joy swelling in the finish chute, and I truly started to soar. Seconds later I crossed over in a time of 5:21. In 7,000th place thereabouts, but I felt like I had won. With my medal worn so proud, I felt I'd come so far, but the true test was yet to come. The robotic walked back to my car. Over the next few days, my penguin walk eased off, and I realised running that race for me just wasn't enough. So I laced up my shoes and thought of all that I'd done as maintenance pushed me out the door and I went for another run.
Hi everyone. If you want to achieve something, I've told you before, write a plan. But more importantly than writing the plan is making sure you stick to it. So when the weather's like this and the plan says go for a run, you have to go for the run. If you don't go for the run and you spend your time on the couch instead, then just like everything else, you're not going to achieve your full potential. So if you want to achieve, stick to your plan, do what the plan says, and be consistent all the time. Nice one.
Holy crap, I can't breathe, was my immediate first impression, after dunking my head in the North Sea, stupidly following a friend's suggestion. Now there's a variety of reasons why this is supposed to bring good health, but I'm not going to rhyme them off. Just read the Wim Hof method yourself. His story is a little bit crazy, from jumping into various frozen lakes, living as a beatnik squatter, and a host of long life choice mistakes. And through it all, despite adversity, there was always exposure to cold, and if you believe all that he says, perhaps you will also never grow old. But today I'm just going to explain how I got myself into the sea, and if you have a small interest, you can do it the way that worked for me. It first started in the shower at home, probably about 2 years ago now. Right at the end, I'd turn the temp down, and the shock would hit me like pow! I'd try and last for 30 seconds, as suggested by Mr. Wim Hof, hyperventilating in some distress until I could switch the damn thing off. Day after day, I'd start a little cooler, the dial just a bit more to the low. And wouldn't you know it, within 4 weeks, there was nowhere left for the dial to go. From then on, I just kept it at cold, a bracing start to every morning. But the house shower effect began to wane, and this next bit comes with a warning. Please don't listen to this excited, then head straight down the beach and throw yourself into the waves, a watery, freezing grave you may reach. When I started going in the sea, it was with high levels of precautions. Inner group wetsuits on, coffee waiting. Any newcomers took the same cautions. That first day underwater, ice cream head with numb hands and feet very clearly pushed my boundaries to where I felt close to defeat. It would have been far easier to stay at home and never go back, standing under that lukewarm shower, lacking in any form of frosty attack. But as you'll hopefully know by now, that's not really the way of me, and perhaps setting these examples can maybe inspire 2 or 3. Personally, the biggest realization is the effect it had on my cortisol. Not during, but afterwards, I could almost feel my stress levels fall. So on the days when I take the plunge with those other somewhat crazy guys, the rest of my day seems far easier. You can imagine my surprise. It seems that for me what happens in those freezing waves of fun, no matter what things happen later on, the toughest part of my day is already done. The residual effect is so indescribably good, and that feeling can last the whole day. I'd encourage you all to give it a shot and embrace the Wim Hof way.
Hi guys, please, please, please get yourself outside every day if you can. You owe it to your body and you owe it to your mind. Being outside is awesome, and it is definitely ultra beneficial. So please get outside, especially on a day like today. I mean, look at that. Oh, it's just wonderful. Wonderful day. So get outside and do yourself some favours, and you won't regret it, even if it's pissing down. Get outside. All right, see ya.
I work for the NHS in Scotland, once a shining example of national healthcare, but now it's become a crumbling wreck of staff misery, poor morale and patient despair. For years, one solution that's often touted is not more cash to improve public experience, nor support for them to develop their self-care, but to say to its workers, be more resilient. It does seem a little bit odd to me to imply that we're all a bunch of flakes, when you consider the decades of schooling and sacrifices a doctor in training makes. But this isn't the only daft recommendation made up on high about this medical mess. Look at the example called efficiency savings, which basically means do more with less. Without a massive injection of funding or aid to promote public self-accountability, things are not going to improve that soon. So let's discuss resilience, and I'll calm my volatility. Life is full of all kinds of adversity, and these can completely fill up your day. Illness, grief, work and financial crisis, which is when resilience comes into play. Now, doesn't that sound quite useful? A helpful and handy little skill. How can I get more of that, you ask? Well, listen on and tell you I will. Resilience isn't a fixed characteristic. It can be quite fluid and can grow, but it needs a wee bit of training and some self-awareness, don't you know? There are a few factors that are involved in maximising your stores of this trait, so let's get into another of my lists. I can hear you all sighing, oh great. First, you need a positive sense of who you are, which brings confidence and self-respect. These counter feelings of helplessness, and against overwhelm you can protect. It helps to have some social support, family and friends to whom you can turn, to bail you out of a crisis or a trauma, a shoulder to aid you with your current concern. Learning to regulate one's emotions can help when things are getting tough. You can focus through the challenge, knowing things won't always be this rough. You should develop your communication skills, which help recruit support to take action. This inspires trust and confidence in others, which might just help their resilience a fraction. Finally, there are the ever-mentioned coping skills, which are certainly an area for us to progress. Learning optimism and problem solving will inch us to resilient success. Now let me share a little story about a friend of mine called Pete, who decided to run every day for a year just to see if his mind could cope, and his feet. This was a self-imposed test of resilience. He actually asked me to join him, don't you know? But after a couple of weeks and a knee issue, my resilience told him exactly where to go. Our hero, however, was mentally strong and pushed out a 5k run each day. Little was he to know his mettle would be tested by all that got in his way. Like Ross Edgley, who swam around the UK with a regular face full of jellyfish toxin, Pete was in charge of his reactions, and controlling the controllables was his only option. He couldn't help that he contracted COVID, which completely did his lungs in, but he still did a shuffling run/walk around the periphery of his garden. It probably was dangerous to go out running in an icy ski resort at night, but he'd packed his trainers, so went anyway. Some might say in the head he's not right. Most of us would think, forget it, after a night out and a few glasses of wine, but he'd lace up his shoes and hit the road despite struggling to walk in a straight line. The same goes with the morning after, when he had the hangover sore head. He continued to buck the trend of his peers, who would just spend the day in their bed. When days at work were a massive challenge and his face wore worry and a frown, he'd don those faithful running shoes for an uplifting loop around the town. And when he went away with his friends on a boys' weekend sailing trip, he'd run around the deck in circles or jog around a small island for a bit. But the hardest test came right at the end, and when you hear this you'll think I'm joking. He fell over and ended up in the ED, yet kept running with 4 ribs that were broken. He finally made it to the end of the year, to much Strava kudos and praise. Despite a lot of difficult hurdles, he ran as planned for 365 days. Unlike Pete, who chose to test himself to see if he had the fortitude to do it, our usual tests of resilience come out of the blue and are on us before we know it. This is why you need to be practicing it now, not waiting for the external scare. You should be working on your resilience today. Better than a half-hearted reaction is to prepare. If you become more self-aware, you'll know how you behave when stressed, so you can work on your weaknesses and not succumb in the face of a test. Practicing skills to help regulate yourself and keep your stresses under control, like breathing techniques and mindfulness, can make adverse events take less of a toll. Learn a few useful coping skills instead of weeping into that bottle of wine. Journaling, exercise, better sleep, creativity, and socializing all improve a stressful time. You can actually develop your optimism. It seems unlikely, but it's true. Focus on previous problems you've conquered, and this awareness will help pull you through. I hope some of this info has been useful, so the next time that you're put to the test, you've got a few tools that you can use demonstrating your resilience is at its best. You don't have to be more like my mate Pete, and perhaps you'll stay hungover in bed, but maybe, just maybe, you'll realise you can choose to be a better version of you instead.
Morning everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's a little bit windy. Welcome to spring in Scotland. It is, dreich is what it is. It's dreich, which is a good Scottish word for miserable and grey and wet. So that's what April is like here sometimes. Anyway, today a bit different, sort of picture-in-picture thing. So I'll be doing a doodle, which has, all the usual benefits. But I'm also going to talk today about the benefits of being outside early in the morning. So it's early in the morning. You can't tell because the sun is apparently up, but it's reasonably early, and I've gone for a walk. And I want to talk a bit about that. I always say I want to talk a bit about, I want to talk a bit about something. But anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about being out early in the morning and why it's good for you. So stay tuned. I hope you make it to the end of another shaky video, although this time I'm using a gimbally selfie stick. That will hopefully stop the camera shake. But anyway, here goes. So first up, you'll have seen a video, you might have seen a video I did about a thing called Miracle Morning a long time ago. Off the back of that, I've designed these journals, which will be either there or there, depending on where this picture is in the video. But being up early in the morning and being outside in the morning has loads of advantages. They're often forgotten about. I think the average person in the UK spends less than 32 minutes outside per day, which, given that we're outside and outdoor creatures, is pretty ridiculous. So if you can at least get a little bit of time outside in the morning, that really does set you up for the rest of the day. Over the course of this video, I'm going to tell you a few things that make an outside, make being outside first thing in the morning totally valuable. And you should definitely consider trying to fit it into your day. And if you can't, then look at that book, Miracle Morning. Consider going to bed an hour earlier and getting up an hour earlier and doing it then. So let's get started with the various benefits. So the first one, and possibly the most obvious one, is if you're up and you're out, you're going to exercise. If you exercise at the start of the day, then you've already done your steps and you can feel righteous about that, and you don't need to worry so much for the rest of the day. It gets your body kind of up and going, and it gets you, ready for the day ahead. So first up, exercise, definitely the most valuable part to it. That doesn't mean there's not still benefits of getting up and sitting outside for half an hour in the morning, but if you're up and you're out, you're likely to go and do something. So get up, get out, get walking. Next up, we have vitamin D. Vitamin D is useful for a few things. You do get some vitamin D in your diet, but predominantly, if you're in a country that's not like this, you're going to get it from sunlight. Over the course of the COVID lockdowns, the UK government was giving free vitamin D supplements to all the people over a certain age, I think, because they were getting absolutely no outdoor time, and so there was a worry that they were going to end up low in vitamin D. And most people realise vitamin D is important for their bones, for healthy skeleton and things like that. But the second reason for getting vitamin D is that it's really good for your immune system. If you don't have enough vitamin D, your immune system isn't going to behave properly, which makes you more prone to things like infections and illness. So taking COVID as an example, if you ironically lock people away in their house for months on end, their chances of having a severe COVID reaction was going to be higher. So best thing to do, get some vitamin D. You only need 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes a day of vitamin D sunlight exposure to make your vitamin D. In a climate like this, you probably need a wee bit more, especially in the winter months, but you can still get some, and there's still some sunlight up there. So get outside, get your vitamin D. Right, I'm always banging on about anxiety and low mood, but definitely being outside first thing in the morning helps tremendously. Your serotonin levels go up, your cortisol levels go down, and in particular, the more nature-based your activity, the better that effect. The Japanese talk about a thing called Shinrin-yoku, which means nature bathing, and it's not just being outside, it's being out in nature. Big raindrop there. It's about being out in nature. Yeah, do you see my cheat notes here on my hand? It's about being outside and being in nature and enjoying that relaxing feeling that you get. And the studies have shown that if people go out into a forest or a woodland or somewhere like this, and they go out to do the nature bathing, you know, their attention improves and their serotonin gets better, etc. But also if they do it with a phone in their hand, they get none of that effect. So best to leave the phone at home. Leave the phone at home. Then I wouldn't be able to film anything. Yes, leave the phone at home, or at least keep it in your pocket when you're doing something like this. I'm very lucky that I live one street away from the countryside, and as you can hear around me, there's lots of bird sounds, which is very nice. Unfortunately, if you don't, then I'm actually in a stately home estate at the moment, wandering around. If you live in a city, you can still get this effect, but best to try and find like a park or somewhere where there's some woodland. A lot of cities now have green spaces. You know, get out in those, and that will do the same as if you're living in the countryside. You can't get away from the noise of the vehicles, unfortunately, and I can hear them in the background from one of the nearby roads, but still lovely being out in the woodland sort of areas. So find something that's green, and I don't mean I don't mean a frog. I mean find a bit of green forest space or woodland or even a park, and that will do the trick. Right, sleep, really important. People have this whole thing about having a sleep routine, and that revolves around drinking chamomile tea at night and having lavender scented pillows. But sleep begins in the morning. Your sleep cycle starts with when you wake up. So the first thing you have to do is be outside. When you're outside, the eyes pick up all of that infrared light that's coming, even in the early, gloaming, or whatever they call it before the sun comes up. That you're still getting light into the melanopsin receptors at the back of the eye, which are saying, it's daytime. And as a result of that, your brain starts its kind of countdown timer for when it's time to go to bed. So about 16 hours later, you'll start getting those signals of the sort of sleepiness and yawning, and that's when you should be in your bed. You should be in your bed with a book at that point, not sitting in front of the TV trying to push through. So if you get those, if you get out early in the morning, those signals will become more pronounced. Try and tie it into a regular routine, and you'll find your sleep improves dramatically. Right, I don't know if you could hear on that last clip a woodpecker. It's quite nice, and a rooster, which is over that wall. So yeah, we'll hear it again, I think. So I'm getting quite close to home, so we're near a couple of roads, so there might be a bit of car noise, which I apologise for. But the other thing I wanted to mention is the social aspect. If you get out and walk, I mentioned it actually in another video, the accountability thing. If you've got someone that you do something with, you're more inclined to actually go. So if you do plan to do a daily walk, or you plan to do some form of daily exercise, you get someone else to do it with you, especially if you're struggling to be motivated yourself. Muddy puddles. And you're much more likely to do it. But also there's that social connection bond that happens, gives you a time to decompress. You're far less likely to get your phone out and start staring at a screen if you've got someone else to chat to. So get someone else from your kind of social circle that you think might be up for this, and get out and walk with them, because they'll benefit from that as well. So you're kind of delivering a service also, and when we deliver service, we feel better about ourselves. So do that. Get a friend, get someone you can walk with regularly if you're not motivated, and they'll help motivate you and you'll help motivate them, and the world will be a happier place. So 2 other things to talk about with this early morning malarkey. One of which is not that I do need to waterproof this jacket because I'm soaked. But anyway, the 2 things to talk about are creativity. When you're out and about and you're walking, you're much more likely to solve problems. You're much more likely to have creative ideas. Sorry about this car. Okay, moving on. You're much more likely to have sort of creative impulses that come to mind when your mind is clear and you're kind of not burdened with all the trappings of everyday life. So when you can get out, be in nature, go out for a walk, especially early morning, you are much more likely to come up with ideas and things that will overall help you, maybe that day, maybe later that week, maybe later that year. But definitely creativity does spring to mind as a benefit of being out early in the morning and going for an early morning walk. Okay, almost done. The last one. Look, I'm sure there's millions of other good reasons for going out and having a walk, but the last one I'm going to mention today is weight. It should probably be the first one, that's the clickbait. If I put this first, people would probably watch the video a lot more, be a lot more viral than it's going to be with 17 people watching it. But anyway, weight is quite, obviously it's a touchy subject, but with doing some kind of early morning exercise practice, and particularly if that's outdoors, your weight may go down. And the reason for that, there's two reasons. The first is, well, you're doing exercise. So when you go out and you exercise, you are going to use up some calories. You get your body set up for the day. Your metabolism might go up a little bit and things like that. So that's the first reason. The second reason, which I'm going to tell you in a second, because a car's going past. Okay, the second reason actually is to do with the routine. So when you get up early and you go outdoors and you do some form of outdoor activity, you're actually more likely to go to bed early. And when you go to bed early at night, you're less likely to do snacking. You're less likely to be, that's my professional, ignore the car face. You're less likely to just kind of veg out on the couch. You're much more likely to be planning your evening around your morning. So a lot of people that I speak to certainly have an issue with that, late at night snacking, watching Netflix, that kind of stuff. And we all do it, but it doesn't mean we have to do it all of the time. So if you get yourself into a routine like this, where every morning has some outdoor time, you're way, way, way less likely to eat additional calories that are actually not serving you any purpose. A long time ago, someone said to me, you should eat for what you're about to do, not for what you've done. And if you're about to go to sleep, you don't need calories. You just need to go to bed. So weight might be something that improves as a result of this practice. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this. A little bit different doing it this way. Sorry about all the ramblings. I tend to just let my mouth run. I've quite enjoyed doing this. Another car. Yeah, you can see I'm no longer quite in the countryside as much as I was before. But yeah, I've enjoyed doing it. I really appreciate you watching the videos to the end, and I hope you got something from it. I'll see you next time. Yeah, look how wet I am now. It's absolutely torrential. Glad I got most of the filming done early. All right.
At least once a year, I'd snowboard on the slopes. It was a significant part of who I used to be. Always at my happiest carving up the powder, or with a mug of vin chaud at the après-ski. But now with a young family of 4 who all harbour apathy for this part of my past, it seems that I'll never hit the slopes again, and this situation appears set to last. I'd really started to come to terms with this over the last 10 years, give or take, but in recent times seeing social media uploads has brought huge envious feelings in their wake. There's been a pattern in February half-term where families I know head off to ski, and the envy I feel bubbles up uncontrolled with the inevitable woe is me. Interestingly, I mentioned this to a local friend who's lived in the area all her life. Apparently this is known here as Ski Week. Looks like I moved to the wrong county with my wife. Now I realise this is a problem of privilege, and I'm lucky to have what I've got. But I'm just using this as an example of how envy comes to the haves as well as the have-nots. But the point of today's story is not about me wanting to ski or snowboard, but how we can deal with those feelings that cause the jealousy that we hoard. One of my heroes, this chap called Jay Shetty, showed me a better way to be. In his book, Think Like a Monk,
he talks about practicing reverse envy. Once I had learned this simple trick, it really turned my feelings around. Listen on to see how it's done so those envious emotions will not be found. Let's go back to that skiing example. Seeing photos of pals having a good time, gliding smoothly over corduroy pistes, or sipping steaming cups of hot wine. They all have smiles on their faces, and their joy is so plain to see. Shouldn't I be happy for them all, even if I'm not them and they aren't me? And here lies the crux of this skill, realizing you can't have what they've got. Would you take that away from your friends? I think you'd realize that you would not. Especially when you look even deeper and understand that their happiness wouldn't come to you. You would have made someone else upset, and knowing what you'd done, you'd be sad and blue. So that's the point I'm trying to get across. If you truly care for others you see, would you undo the pleasure they've worked to create? Is that the person you would want to be? Now that I know of reverse envy, I see my mates' pictures and I beam. I'm delighted that they've managed to have a good time and the envy no longer turns me green. Have a wee shot at this useful trick. When you next feel the jealousy rising, it might help you be a bit less dismayed and pull you out of self-victimizing. And if you ever see someone with a better car, nicer house or more pay, remember envy eats only at your insides and try reversing it using the way of J. You might not get those things that they have and be stuck wishing forever and a day, but at least you won't foster jealousy, allowing that envy just to slip away. A final mantra an enlightened friend told me of, which he keeps in his employ, is to remember in situations just like this, comparison is the thief of joy.
Hi everyone. I was going to say, I'm out for another walk, and if you watch the last 3 videos, it's the same walk. I've just been filming three or four videos, because I haven't got that much time, so I'm trying to fit them all into one walk. Anyway, today's video is on resolutions, but not the one I did before about my resolution for last year, but on how you can make your resolution stick for this year. So stay tuned, and I hope you find something useful in this video. Okay. So, it's 2025. My first bit of advice about making a resolution is don't bother. At least not until January's out the way. January is a rubbish month. It's so long, it's cold, it's wet, it's dark, there's nothing to look forward to, everything's rubbish. So don't bother, wait till February. But maybe towards the end of January, start planning. And if you're going to plan to do something, as I've said in my last video, make it a smart plan, make it one that you can definitely achieve. So to cover that, SMART stands for S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for attainable, R is for realistic, and T is for time bound. So the R could also be relevant as well. You know, there's no point in me saying I'm going to learn to be a fighter pilot. It's not relevant at all. So realistic and relevant. Anyway, so that's what a SMART plan stands for, or the SMART anagram. Anagram? That's not right. What do you call those things? Anyway, that's what SMART stands for. So, acronym. That's the word. Acronym. So, what am I doing this year? Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and you could all do this as well, I suspect, but I'm just using it as an example of how to put the SMART plan into action, and hopefully I'll make a follow-up video 12 months from now showing that I've actually achieved my plan. So what is my plan for the year? Well, as I've said in another video, don't call it a New Year's resolution. It's a rubbish word because people get it mixed up, and often what they mean is a New Year's hope or a New Year's wish, and neither of those will happen. So call it a New Year's plan. And my plan is to try and do
sets of chin-ups. It sounds easy, doesn't it? Well, if you're 65 kilograms and you're reasonably strong, you can probably do them no bother. I am neither of those things. So, but I don't think it's unachievable. And when I go through the SMART, you'll see why. So, specific S. I will be able to do a set of chin-ups. 10, let's say, oh gosh, I'm making a deal now, let's make it 10. Let's say I can do 10 chin-ups by the end of the year. It was only going to be one, but okay, now it's 10. So that's specific. Measurable. Well, I can count to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The other thing about specific, it was unassisted, because when I'm going to try and do these, I'm going to have some kind of assistance. And I'll explain that in a sec. So, where did I get to? Measurable. A is attainable. Is it attainable? Well, what do I need to attain it? First of all, I need some time in the week, and chin-ups don't take very long. I should point out there's a difference between a chin-up and a pull-up. A chin-up is where your hands are here and you bring your chin up to the bar, and a pull-up is where you grab the bar this way and you're bringing it up that way. At least I think that's what it is. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Where was I? Attainable. So what do I need? So I've got a chin-up bar, which I bought a couple of years ago and never used. So it's sitting in a cupboard. So I do have that. And I also have a couple of those elastic bands, the sort of resistant bands, which mean I can attach them to the bar and they will give me some assistance to do the chin-ups. I think, right, if this works, I'll insert a video right here of me doing it with the bands. I make it look easy, don't I? But the other thing you can do is you can actually use a chair and you can pull yourself up and just let yourself go down. That's called doing what's called a negative pull-up. So if I do lots of them, you do get a lot of stimulus for that, and hopefully that will help build up some muscle. Oh jeez. Anyway, so that's, where was I? Attainable, right? So I've got the stuff to do it. Is it realistic? Well, of course it's realistic. Everyone should be able to pull themselves up. I mean, it's a basic human movement. Squatting, running, pulling yourself up and pulling, and carrying, those are the normal human movements. So everyone should be able to do those movements, and a lot of us can't. But we'll see how it goes. So that's realistic. The other thing about it is it relevant? Why do I need to do that? Well, over a year ago I started going to CrossFit, and it's embarrassing. It is actually embarrassing that I can't do a chin-up. And when I was in my 20s, I used to do loads of them, and I was much leaner, I was much stronger, and now I can't do anything. I can't even do one unassisted pull-up. It's just disgusting, right? It's how things slide. And yeah, I don't like it. So it is relevant to me, and I'm going to try and achieve that. And the last one is time bound. Well, I've given myself 12 months, and I think pretty much in 12 months you can do anything. If I can do an Ironman in 12 months, I can surely do a pull-up or a chin-up or whichever one it is. So that's the goal. That is how I'm going to do it. And I think you can take that plan and put it to whatever you want to do. So at the start of February 2025, write down your plan of what you want to do, and if it is something like weight loss, fine, but then break it down. What am I going to do this month? What am I going to do next month? What am I going to do the month after that? If it's about doing something physical, then write out a plan of how you're going to manage the rest, how you're going to manage the nutrition, how you're going to manage the couch to 5k. You know, just break it down and do it piece by piece and build on any successes. But you will relapse. Everyone does. There'll be a week where I don't do a single chin up and then can't do, you know, anything like what I was doing the previous week. You have to just accept that happens. And if you look up cycle of change, you'll see one part of it is relapse. And as long as you get back onto the cycle again, you'll be fine. So don't beat yourself up. Pick something that you feel you can do, or that's really dear to you. You've just never had the wherewithal to do it. And make your plan, use the SMART plan if you like, and hopefully when I make a video at the end of this year and say, did anyone else manage it? The rest of you can say, yes, I did. Thank you very much. So
Have a great 2025. I hope you make some good plans. I hope you're able to stick to them. But as I say many times, hope is not a strategy. So I've used this phrase before. Prepare to fail to prepare, and then prepare to fail. I think that's how it goes. So in other words, make a good plan and stick to it. Consistency is the key. Right, that's enough for now. I hope that's useful, and I will see you in the next video. Nice one.
Should I think about doing a cold water plunge? Well, the answer is definitely. They offer powerful benefits for both your mind and your body. First of all, they boost your circulation, they increase blood flow, and they can improve recovery and reduce muscle soreness after workouts. The cold exposure also stimulates endorphins, and these help elevate your mood and reduce your stress. And they often leave you feeling clear-headed and energized. Regular cold plunges can strengthen your immune system, and they enhance your body's resilience to illness. Plus, taking on the challenge of a cold plunge builds mental toughness, and it pushes you outside of your comfort zone. So while it might be chilly, the benefits are well worth the plunge. And I'd also say this, after I've been in the sea, the rest of my day seems very easy. About 20 or so years ago, I was in an orthopaedic clinic with one of the knee consultants, whom I thought was a bit of a cynic. An old lady sat wheezing in front of him, gripping a hold of her walking cane, her joints all swollen and arthritic. She told us all about her knee pain. With heart and lungs not fit for surgery, she would just need to see her GP to fill her with more painkiller meds, and that was just the way it had to be. She then complained about her house stairs, which she could only climb really slow. Perhaps it was time for her to sell up and downsize to a little bungalow. The consultant then laughed out loud, blurting a response without refrain. "If you buy a place like that," he said, "you'll never walk upstairs again." It seems she was in a catch-22, too sore and too weak to ascend, and unfit from poor lifestyle choices to allow surgery to make amends. She had well and truly missed the boat. Her smoking and diet had taken their toll. While there were anaesthetic advancements, this situation her body just could not thole. It took 2 decades of being a doctor before I came to understand this thought. You might think lifespan is important, but it's now clear on its own it's not. Healthspan is a far better concept. It's a much fuller way to live. When you look after yourself, your body will have so much more to give. Lifespan is just a number, it appears, a bit like counting up your wealth. Just because you're a millionaire, it doesn't mean you have good health. It certainly doesn't take into account if you can climb stairs or go for a run, do your own shopping, clean the house, swim 50 lengths, or wipe your own bum. We outsource our health and well-being and take drugs to help us get old. After all, this is how the system works. At least that's what we've been told. Take all these tablets, live in more comfort, say all the so-called expert voices, but insidiously we deteriorate and forget about better choices. I'm reminded all about this when I read about Dan Buettner and his blue zones, which contrast with the old lady's poor health and her worn-out knee pain groans. These are places in the world where people live a long and happy life, usually illness-free to more than 80, without the huge pharmaceutical load strife. They eat a seasonal plant-based diet, which should come as no surprise, without any toxic substance use, good social connections, and lots of exercise. They spend more time outdoors, soaking up sun, nature, and the breeze, and they lean into hard work, so they do. In fact, old age is their main disease. Despite seeing many examples like this, our society seems completely content.
feeding us more pills and removing discomfort, which all lead to our ageing detriment. Also, do we not have a responsibility to make looking after ourselves our mission, to lessen the burden on family and friends and healthcare service provision? I'm sincerely convinced that this would mean governments needn't scrabble for coins on the ground. I'm sure there would be more than enough healthcare wealth to go around. As with most things we become aware of, a lot of this is just common sense. Eating better and daily exercise to build up our body's defence. So get yourself down to the gym. It's time to lift some weights. At the very least, go out for a walk before your current lifestyle makes it too late. Get rid of all the toxic substances and from unhelpful habits disengage. Today will always be the day when you can start training for old age.
Morning everyone. If you've had a crappy week and you've just started the weekend, then make sure you get outside, get some exercise, get some sunshine, and try and shake off some of that residue from last week, because there's no point in mulling over what's happened. Instead, be in the now, think about where you are just now, and don't waste your free time by sitting on the couch and being miserable about all the garbage that happened in the previous week. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the now, and hopefully you feel better starting next week. So get out there and have a nice weekend. See you. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to run a marathon? Do you want to build your own house? Do you want to open a new business? Well, if you've got ambitions and you've never actually got them done and dealt with and realised, perhaps this video is for you. So stay tuned and I'll show you a way to try and make those things happen. I'm out on a 30-kilometre run this morning. At least I'm trying to do that. And I'm really struggling. So I thought I should make a video. I have no script, I haven't planned anything, but what I thought I would talk about is planning and how you can go from being someone like me that couldn't make it to the end of the street without stopping to someone who can run for 3+ hours, albeit with a lot of difficulty. So stay tuned and we'll talk about how to create a plan that might work for you. So the basis of any plan is writing the damn thing down. There's no point in thinking about something and then not committing it to paper. It's all well and good thinking about it, but actually putting it out in the world makes you more accountable. And the thing I've found the most useful for these things has been a smart plan. Smart plans have been around for ages. I've even talked about them, I think, in another video. Do you know what? I keep saying I've looked back at a few videos recently and I just go Anyway, so we'll talk about a smart plan. I'll explain what that means and I'll let you know how you can apply that on your day-to-day, month-to-month, week-to-week, whatever, for whatever your ambitions are. So I've got a friend, and you know who you are, who's signed himself up for a race. Now the race is about 4 months away. 4 months away. And they haven't started training yet. And we've had a few conversations about this and how they've got kind of stuck with this mental blank. And that happens to a lot of people because, as I've said in other videos, the difficulty isn't doing the run. The barrier to doing the run is putting the shoes on and going outside. Once you've done that, the run's easy. Or at least the run itself might not be easy. But doing it is straightforward because you've removed the barrier. So in a smart plan, or any plan, if you write it down, you're 40% more likely to make it happen. So get a big bit of paper, get your favourite set of pens, and we'll go through SMART and what it stands for and how to make things happen. S. S stands for specific. So you have to make the plan specific. It has to be, I will do this. So if it's going to be something like weight, don't say I'll lose weight. Say I want to lose 5 pounds or 2 kilos or whatever it is. But you have to make it very specific. So next to S, write down your specific goal. What do you want to happen? And that's S. M is for measurable. And sometimes I find that S and I almost said sometimes I find S and M goes together. It's definitely taking my mind off this horrible run this morning. S and M, geez. No, I'm quite wholesome. I'm not talking about what you think I'm talking about. I'm talking about a Metallica album called S&M. No, anyway, right. M is measurable. So in that last example about SMART is what can you measure? Can you measure weight? Can you measure how far you can run? Can you measure how much of the craft project you've completed? Whatever it is, you have to be able to measure it. So if you can measure things, you're more likely. I think, what's the phrase? Something about what gets measured gets done or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, so M is measure. So make sure you can measure your outcomes and be able to track. And that might be using things like apps like MyFitnessPal or something like that, or Strava. So M for measurement. Next we have A. A is for attainable. I mean, can you actually do it? I've always wanted to slam dunk a basketball. Maybe I should just leave it there. It's never going to happen unless I have some kind of bionic limbs fitted. So it's not attainable for me to slam dunk a basketball. Maybe I could lower the hoop. But can you do it? And sitting on the couch, you'll never do it. But could you do it? That's good enough. So if you think, hey, I could probably lose 5 pounds, or yeah, I could probably run a 5k, then it's attainable. Also, if you've done it before, but it was years ago, it's probably still attainable. So A is for attainable. So there's lots of flies. Maybe it's me, maybe I stink. Maybe this video stinks. So get A written down and put exactly whether you think it's attainable and will you be able to accomplish it. Okay, R is next. I'm good at spelling. S-M-A-R. R is next. And that stands for realistic. Is it a realistic plan? Now, I think everything's realistic, but I don't think everything is realistic in the beginning. So if I decided today, right, I'm going to open a vegan restaurant, it's going to be the #1 restaurant in Scotland. That's not realistic. But I could start by saying, I'm going to do a culinary degree, or I'm going to start working in a restaurant. And then when I make my next plan, I can build from there. So make it realistic. Sorry, apologise for that. Find something that you think, I guess similar to attainable, but is it something that is actually within your grasp and something that you can really achieve? So realistic is R. If you pop that down on your SMART plan, you'll be able to understand whether or not the plan you're pursuing is pointless or not. So R for realistic. Last up we've got T for time bound. That means you're trying to give yourself a window of when you're going to complete this. There is really very little point in saying I'm going to lose 5 pounds and then someone says, when are you going to do it by? And you say, I don't know, at some point. That doesn't really make you accountable to your own plan. So when you do the T part, make sure that you put a reasonable
but not ridiculous time scale to it. And that will help you fuel that kind of urgency to get the thing done. But at the same time, it will stop you from just dwindling on and on and on and not actually getting anywhere with your plan. So that's T for time bound. So that's how you do a smart plan. That's how this person should be doing it. And when they see this video, maybe it will encourage them and not shame them into popping all that down on a bit of paper and trying to make it happen. Hope that's useful. I'll post here or there or somewhere if I've made this run today. As I say, it's supposed to be 30 kilometers and it's on my Ironman training plan. It's been a struggle so far and I'm not even 10 kilometers in. So I've basically made this video to take my mind off it. But fingers crossed, I'll get to the end. Take care. See you in the next video.
Morning everyone, Dr. Doodle Dad here. This morning I'm about to go and do a cold dip in the sea, and I don't know if you can see my breath. Yeah, it's 2 degrees. Hopefully the sea's a bit warmer. But this morning I thought I'd talk about type 1 and type 2 fun. Some people that I work with are planning to do a marathon relay, and a few of them have been struggling with some of their runs, and they all say the same thing. Once they've been for the run, they all feel a lot better afterwards. And that's type 2 fun. Sorry, I've just got to show you this. Look at that. That's wonderful. What a nice morning. It's not going to be nice when I go in there. But anyway, they always feel better, rejuvenated, righteous after they've been for that run. And I think it's probably best described. Type 1 fun is joy, it's immediate happiness, it's dopamine. And I think of that a bit like eating cake. When you have a piece of cake, you feel, oh, this is great. Sometimes afterwards though, you're not so sure. And maybe you think, well, possibly I shouldn't have done that. And that's a reasonable way to gauge type 1 fun. There's exceptions, of course. I mean, you could go and watch a comedian and have a great time watching him and then afterwards still think that was really good. But type 2 fun is different. Type 2 fun is, you know it's probably the right thing to do. You don't really want to do it. You probably can't be bothered. There's barriers in the way to it, in the way of it. But when you do that, afterwards, you really feel good about it. And I think about a lot of the runs that I go on afterwards. I feel, wow, this was really worth doing. And at the start, when I go outside and I've got my running shoes on and things, I don't feel that way. So type 1 fun at the time, sometimes not fun afterwards. Type 2 fun, not fun when you start, but afterwards you think that was the right thing to do. So that's the difference between the two. I'm going to derobe in a second and put myself in there. I'm just waiting for some moral support to arrive. So yes, hopefully you'll enjoy seeing me throw myself in the 4th again. But what a lovely morning. I mean, look at that. It's just lovely. The sun's up. Waves are lapping nicely on the shore. Very serene. No other sounds really. Lots of birds flying around. So yeah. So I'll see you in a few seconds when I go in the water. Wish me luck. Here comes the moral support. Down to hold my hand while I go in the water. Well, morning, Pete. So everyone, I have some moral support here. Pete, Michael. It's very cold today.
Extremely cold.
Yeah.
Which,
I'm just gonna have to.
Cool it off.
No, let me go.
Yeah, here we go.
Straight in, backwards this time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. There you go. Oh. And that is what we call type 2 fun. At least that's what I'm telling myself it will be later when I look back on it. So yeah, did you hear that? Easier than a screaming toddler. Right, well done everyone. I hope you can find your way to finding some type 2 fun in your day. And as I've said in a previous video, doing something like this makes the rest of the day way easier, so nice.
A couple of weeks ago the doorbell rang and the postie stood package in hand. I asked him what he had for me, but he really wasn't able to expand. I took the parcel from him. Had Christmas come early, perhaps? Guess what it had inside it? A book about drawing RPG maps. It was a gift from a mate up north who lives on the Orcadian Isle. He really knows me, I thought, as I turned the pages with a smile. I rushed to get some cartography started, and the kids wanted to draw with me. Then followed a festival of map making. Well, we drew 2 or 3. But most importantly were my thoughts about the value of this friend who'd got me this excellent gift, and upon him I knew I could depend. There's a book I read called Lost Connections, which is all about stuff like this, and why we should cultivate relationships that enhance our life experience bliss. Different people can fill different roles and float in and out of your life, but true friends will always be there for the good times and also the strife. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the people I adore. In no particular order, of course. Listen on if you want to know more. There's my Orcadian GP pal of the map drawing book fame. He's got me in and out of trouble, but mostly he's been to blame. We lived together at university, lots of mischief had without regret. We share a love of Star Wars, although he's a bit obsessed with Boba Fett. We play the Xbox when time allows and stay in touch as best as we can, which brings me on to my online mates, our Magic Space Points gaming clan. Some of these people I've never met, which might cause some of you to frown. But forming these sorts of friendships really helped in the COVID lockdown. No matter what the time of day, there'd be someone to chat to. From Aberdeen to the Hawaiian Islands, they all helped to pull me through. Next there is my triathlon bestie, whom I now call my Iron Wife. She is someone I truly admire and has led the most fantastic life. She's seen a huge amount of the world and worked and lived all over the place. Scotland and New Zealand to start, but recently Antarctica and Everest Base. But certainly the thing I respect the most, she's generous, insightful and kind, forever thinking of others, qualities we should all keep in mind. My most inventive mate lives in the Berg. His creative skills are second to none. By day he's a general practitioner. By night he wields a pyrograph and glue gun. I cursed the tons of single-use plastic from the lateral flow tests I did on me. But this guy glued them and then sprayed them and hung them as baubles on his Christmas tree. One of my friends has a weird Lego passion. I don't share this and I think it's a bit mad. But my son does, and as a result, he's become like a second dad. We both really dislike gravity and the effect it has on the scales, but we share our non-scale victories and supportive weight loss tales. Now on to the comedian from London, who makes me laugh and laugh and laugh. He has an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and he never does things by half. He loves to cook and entertain and put out dish after dish after dish, all the while conducting the conversation in an accent my son calls Lundish. Then there's the guy that encouraged me to doodle labels for his brewery. But that's a story of living aligned values, and he'll be getting his very own elegy. The G-Man is my oldest friend and reminds me of a simpler time. Throughout school and his law career, his sage words kept me in line. Even though we hardly see each other, I recall the games as kids we'd play. And when we do actually get together, it's like we saw each other yesterday. Then there are my running pals, and they all stay near my home, who get the joy of listening to me as I breathlessly whine and moan. However, they really provide a vital role. As we run on trails which are cold and muddy, I am theirs and they are mine, and we are each other's accountability. I've left plenty of people out, and this poem isn't meant as a boast, but I wanted to demonstrate how friendships in life help us get out the most. These people seem to be able to get the best out of me. They are there when things are going great, but also show up for the catastrophe. I think that it's so important to surround yourself with your tribe, and I know that sometimes finding them might be a lot harder than I describe. But when certain folk cross your path, make sure that you have an open mind, and perhaps within that stranger a new best friend you will find.
Hi everyone. I know I say this all the time, but you need to go outside more often. I have not been feeling that great over the last couple of days, mainly I think just exhausted from New Year's Eve celebrations, having guests over, all that kind of stuff. And I've been grumpy all morning, but I decided I would go out for a walk, and my goodness me, I feel so much better within a few seconds of being outside, or a few minutes anyway. So maybe that should be a New Year's resolution for people, is that they go out every day and have a bit of outdoor time. But it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Get yourself outside. All right, nice. Morning everyone. What is embarrassment? Why do we get it? And what's the point of it? But more importantly, what lesson is it trying to teach us? So today, I'm going to try and answer that based on something that happened yesterday, which was quite unusual, for me anyway. Okay, stay tuned. Look at that. It's the nicest morning of the year so far. Well, I think you can probably see my breath, but it's going to be 17 degrees today. So anyway, out for a run, as I said, and I'm going to tell you this story about embarrassment. So as you know, I like to go and do cold water dip. I go most Fridays when I can. And yesterday, before work, I went to the usual watering hole, and the guys I normally go with weren't there. And I waited for about 10 minutes in the car, and I messaged them, they didn't turn up, didn't answer. And so I thought maybe they're in already, but I hadn't seen their cars. Anyway, there was, well, I don't know, half a dozen ladies in there swimming. Like properly swimming, not just doing a cold plunge. And my immediate reaction was one of overwhelming embarrassment. Sorry, sun's come up, sorry about that. Overwhelming embarrassment. And I got back in the car and I drove away. Now, I spent all morning with a couple of feelings. The first one was, well, I didn't do something I enjoy doing. And I haven't really got a good explanation why I didn't do it, apart from embarrassment. And the second thing I spent ages thinking about, was why? Why did I feel that way? What is the embarrassment trying to teach me? And how can I change that for next time? So let's talk about embarrassment and what it is and what we can learn from it. So what is embarrassment? The actual answer is I don't really know. And when you look it up, it's a little bit unclear. There's lots of explanations. But I think the main one, and certainly my interpretation of it, is embarrassment is probably an evolutionary designed social response to an uncomfortable situation where you feel you've done something bad and people will pick on you as a result and laugh at you, and you feel that horrible pit of the stomach feeling. It's not quite the same as guilt or shame. It's probably like a loose cousin of them. But if you imagine that you were in a tribe 10,000 years ago and you did something that the rest of the tribe found a bit odd and a bit weird, and they all pointed at you and started laughing at you, well, it would be teaching you a lesson, which is don't do this again, because if you do, you'll be singled out. And that's maybe, I suppose that's my interpretation of where embarrassment comes from. The unfortunate thing is, in modern society, it can be really overwhelming. And as I found out yesterday,
it can stop you doing things you actually enjoy. So think about, you play piano, but you're too embarrassed to play in a concert or in a competition. Or you really like swimming, like I do, but you're embarrassed about your body shape. And that's what happened to me yesterday, is I was embarrassed, not because they were strangers, I could speak to anyone about anything, but I felt uncomfortable going in that water in just my shorts with 6 or 7 other randoms who all knew each other. They were a little tribe, and suddenly this big tubby guy comes into the water. So that was what stopped me. And I think that is a reasonable, well, certainly it's my feelings and my understanding about what embarrassment is there for, and how it causes us to kind of conform with what everyone else is doing, how everyone else is. That's my thoughts. So the next question is, why do we get it in terms of a reflection or a lesson? And I spent a lot of yesterday thinking about this. I mean, I had a normal morning clinic. I didn't enjoy it as much because I hadn't had my morning dip, and I felt a bit annoyed with myself. So the reflection for me afterwards was one of 2 things. The first one, and probably the most realistic one, is those people don't care. They are not going to go home and talk about some random guy that turned up, got in the water for 2 minutes and then left. They're just busy with their own lives. But I'm so obsessed, as I'm sure a lot of us are, with external validation, is that we shy away from those experiences because we're worried about what others think. And so from the first bit of reflection, I realised I should have just done it. Right now I wouldn't think anything of it, and I would have had my morning dip and I'd have felt better. But instead, I let embarrassment get in the way. Now the second reflection, of course, is the obvious one. It's the aesthetics, the body habitus, my shape, all of that. I'm not comfortable getting into a situation like that with strangers. I was recently at Centre Parks with the kids, and the whole time I wore a rashie when I was at the tropical swimming pool place. And my kids, one of them said, "Dad, why do you wear that?" And I made some half-arsed excuse about getting cold, waiting in queues for water slides. But actuality is, I'm not comfortable. And there was plenty of people there with worse dad bods than me. But geez, I don't know how they do it. And I felt really kind of a lot of shame being asked that question. So the second reflection is, if you feel embarrassed about something, what is it that you need to do? And the answer is, you need to lean into that. You need to say, what caused me to feel this way and how can I change it? And in the case of this episode, well, I need to lose some weight. And believe me, I've been trying for my whole life. And I need to think about ways to trim down as well. So develop that nobody cares mentality is the first one. And then, well, what can I actually do to make myself feel less that way? So that's what I'd say the embarrassment has taught me. So I'd say this to you. If you ever find yourself in an embarrassing situation, ask yourself, why was I embarrassed? Was it because you didn't know enough? Was it because you didn't have enough expertise on a topic? Was it because you didn't practice enough? Was it because you had isolated yourself and you needed some social backup? I mean, there can be thousands of reasons why we get embarrassed. And as I say, it's usually intermingled with a wee bit of shame and a wee bit of guilt. And those are all really unhelpful feelings, but perhaps they can lead you to a more helpful place. So have a think about that. And I hope the next time you're embarrassed, you just get yourself outside of yourself and look at why you felt that way and say, what can I change for next time? Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Morning everyone, Dr. Doodle Dad here. Today we're talking about habit formation. I've done a few videos recently on habits which are good for you, but I've not really exactly told you how to make those habits stick. So that's what today's topic is going to be all about. Nice. I have found myself down in Northumberland. We try to come down here every few months. Every time I come here it's raining. It's supposed to be nice and sunny. Anyway, last time I was here was Storm Bert, if you remember. I think I almost broke my back. Anyway, this time I've got the right shoes on. And not quite a storm today, but pretty bad running conditions. So, as I said in the intro, and I'm sorry for the wind if you can't hear me, but I'll try and talk up. I'm talking about habit formation. Jeez, look. Right, I'm talking about habit formation, and I want to make one thing very clear. The habit that you need to change is tiny. It's not massive. It's very, very small. And I'm going to give you an example of that, which you probably all do every day. What's that example? Well, you all brush your teeth. But the habit isn't brushing the teeth. The habit is going in the bathroom and putting the toothpaste on the brush. That's all you need to do. I bet there's none of you out there who have put your toothpaste on your brush and then put the brush down and walked back out again. And that's the secret. You're trying to find something really small that you can do very easily, and the rest of the habit takes care of itself. But you have to make that first initial one the priority, and after that everything else follows. I'm going to use this run as another example. Now, as I said in the beginning of this video, we're down in Northumberland for the weekend. It's only about an hour and a half drive from where I live, and it's a lovely part of the world and very quiet, quite unexplored by the general public, I feel. And when you're running and you find things like that, then you can't believe that there's not more people here. I should confess, in an earlier life I used to do a lot of photography, and the last time I stood on this beach, those were nicknamed the Black Rocks of Death because they are so slippy. And we were trying to get a photograph. I mean, it's like a volcanic, I don't know, path of magma. It's just frozen in time out there. It's almost like a skate jump or a snowboard jump. It's weird. But anyway, Black Rocks of Death. But also, can you imagine, like 800 years ago or something, coming into this coast from another country and seeing that on the hillside? My goodness me, you would turn around and leave. Not the Vikings, of course. I think they stayed for quite a while, but anyone else on a fishing trip might turn around. Anyway, so Dunstanburgh Castle up there. I'm going to take a photograph of it and maybe try and paint it later. But I just thought I'd show you that because it is a lovely bit of the world with lots and lots of history, and definitely worth making your way to Northumberland at some point if you can. A lovely bit of the world. I was going to run for this bit, but I know you all complain about me running and saying, I can't hear what you're saying. But I'm not running because the wind is so bad that actually if I try and talk, I don't think you'll hear me. So, as I was saying, Dunstanburgh Castle there, and I'm on this run. Now, when I looked out this morning, it was pouring, and I was definitely not going to go out. And there's a habit that I've developed which keeps me going. And you might think, oh well, years ago did you use that habit, you know, when you were not into running stuff. Oh, look, I'm not into running. I hate running. I'm rubbish at running. But I still do it. And the reason I do it is because I've got stuck in this habit. And the habit is not to go and do your 5k or do your planned 10k or do your race day training or anything. Those are just a result of the habit. And the habit is this: I put my shoes on and I go outside. you know, it's a bit of a hassle, you got to put the running stuff on that, but basically that's the habit. It takes me about 2 minutes, and then I go and stand outside. And I went outside this morning, and I thought, oh, I'll come outside now, I might as well just go for the run. And that's the secret. I think people think there's some weird voodoo about how people manage these incredible habits, but it's as simple as that. Like, I don't really like running. I'm not very good at it. I'm really slow. And when I go on a run like this, which is like from way over there all the way down the coast, and I come up to the castle here, I'm now stuck. I'm gonna have to run all the way back again. I don't like that, but I still do it because the habit for me is not the run. The habit for me is the putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush. And that's the same as putting the shoes on and going outside. Does that make sense? I hope it does. It's a bit long-winded and ranty, but I hope that makes sense. So I hope you stay tuned to the end of this video, because at the end I'm going to give you some tips on how you can apply this habit to anything, whether it's sleep or nutrition or anything. I haven't written a script today, so I'm going to have to think these up. They might be complete rubbish. Anyway, scrub to the end if you just want the tips. This has gone from bad to worse. Oh my god. Storm Burt flashbacks. Jeez. The first one, let's start with nutrition. To use a very small habit with regards to nutrition would be, well, I'll give you two. The first one that really worked for me was before I opened the fridge. It didn't matter if I was getting out milk or non-dairy milk or whatever. I would just ask myself, is this helpful? And if the answer was no, I then had to justify why I was doing it. But that really worked for me. So that's one tip. A very small habit. Just do it every single time, and it really helped. The other nutrition habit, which might help you, is pick a time in the evening, say 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and say, we set an alarm on your phone, and the alarm just has to say stop eating. So when it gets to 7 o'clock at night, that little alarm goes off, and it reminds you of a promise you've made to yourself to not eat after 7 o'clock. Now, with that one, obviously there's things like time restricted eating, intermittent fasting and things like that, which you can incorporate into that, but that's probably the way to start. And as I said about running, you know, you wouldn't go out and run a marathon. Oops, please fasten rope on the gate. I'll do a double, how about that? You wouldn't go out and run a marathon straight away, you have to start small. So if you are going to look into something like intermittent fasting, perhaps the way you start small is set a deadline or a sort of boundary at night time. It says, don't eat past 7 o'clock. There you go, that's your habit. The eating part and all that takes care of itself, but the habit is, I will set an alarm to remind me to stop eating at 7 o'clock at night. The phone will do it for you. You don't even need the habit. The phone will go bing bing, say stop eating, and stop eating. So the next tiny habit that you can do, or micro habit, or whatever you want to call it, is for sleep. This sort of falls all on from the nutrition one. I'm gonna have to stop because I'm lost. So from the nutrition point of view, I said set an alarm, tell you when to stop eating. But from the sleeping point of view, set an alarm to say when to go to bed. Everyone stays up too late and then they complain they're tired in the morning. You're not missing anything by going to bed early. Netflix will still be there the next day. Set an alarm for a good time, 9 o'clock, and say it's bedtime. You'll just wake up. You won't need an alarm for the morning. So that's my next point. So my next habit, this is a tough one. It's very hard to get into this habit because, well, let me tell you a story. When I was training to be a GP on my first, when I applied for my partnership, my trainer said to me, right, see, for the first year, sit on your hands, don't agree to do anything. But we all want to be liked, and I ignored that advice and I put my hand up for everything. Oh, I learned. So this is a bit similar. And this bit of advice is to do with toxic. Well, I'm not going to talk about toxic behaviours, toxic substances I should say, because everyone knows them. You know, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't gamble. They're pretty obvious. But the one people forget about is toxic people. And it's not necessarily their fault. We're always eager to please, aren't we? So quite often we say yes to things, even if that it doesn't feel great, but we still do it. So here's your habit, or at least a phrase you can use to try and break that, which is use your no to protect your yes. Don't say yes to everything. Say no to most things, especially if someone else is asking you to do it. And then when it feels right, you've got tons of energy to say yes and put all that energy into the topic at hand. So for those of you from a certain age group and from the UK, you'll probably remember Zamo from Grange Hill, which was a school TV programme. And Zamo did drugs and he died in the bathroom of the school. And there was a whole song came out which was called Just Say No. And it was a big advertising campaign, it was in the charts, things like that. So do what Zamo should have done and just say no. Now, I started this video talking about physical activity, and just for clarity, the habit for physical activity that I would recommend is just putting on your shoes and going outside. It doesn't matter if you walk 5 meters or 5 miles, but if you don't put your shoes on, you'll never go. So shoes on and go stand outside and see what happens, but make it a non-negotiable. It has to happen 3 times a week, for example, and you'll always do it. So this tip, in terms of a habit, is for relaxation and stress management. We always forget about that one. And my tip for that is just get up half an hour earlier in the morning. That's it. Because if you get up half an hour earlier, you'll suddenly have a bit of time in the day that you didn't have before. No one else is awake. Kids are still in bed. You've got a bit of time where you can call it your own, and then you can do your hobby or do your meditation or whatever. But the tip is to get up slightly earlier. There's a bunch of books on this. There's the 5 AM Club, there's Miracle Morning. That's one I followed for about 9 months. But it doesn't have to be an hour, just a few minutes earlier, and use that time to sit in peace and quiet and do something you love. And you'll find you start your day much less stressful. Alternatively, you can come and join me for a cold water dip. Oh, that is very stressful, but it then takes the stress out the rest of the day, because it's definitely not relaxing, but it does help me manage my stress. My last tip today is a habit for social connection. Like, I really feel social connection is undervalued and often missed out. Some of you might have it by accident, and that's great. But, you know, a lot of us don't. We're very busy and we don't make time for healthy connection with people that we love and think highly of. So my tip for that is to find yourself an accountability buddy. So I want you to go through your list of pals and find out who you can be accountable for, who you can be accountable to. So if it's weight loss, speak to a friend who's having that same journey. If it's exercise, get a running partner. But make a plan to be in touch with them at least once a week to discuss your journey. It's a tiny habit. It could be a text message. A friend of mine and I, on a Friday morning, text each other our weights. And in fairness, we've done it for years and the weight has never changed. And we just then, it's usually followed by a bunch of angry emojis. But at least I'm staying steady. And I'm using that little tiny habit of texting my pal to say, here's my weight this morning. How are you getting on? How did you get on this week? So that's my tip for social connection. If you can't meet people in a venue and you can't hang out from a social point of view because you're too busy, make it a tiny social connection. Just something that keeps you wired in with a group of people that you actually care about, other than your, the people you share the house with. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. Okay, so thanks for joining me today again, and I hope you've learnt something. I hope you found this useful. I am now on the most boring road in the world, which is completely straight all the way back, pretty much to where I started. At least it's downhill. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Nice.
Do you remember this video? Well, go back and take a glance. It might help you to realise why your resolutions never seem to advance. Or what about this one here? A fun little alignment tale. Well, if you put the two together, you'll see why New Year's plans almost always fail. Resolutions seem like a good idea when we're fired up from the festive high. But when we decide what they should be, are we being true to where our values lie? The answer to this is usually no, and we pick things that are off the chart. Then as mid-January rolls around, we wonder why we've lost so much heart. Well, today I'm going to point out some reasons that our resolutions might not work out, and then make a few useful suggestions which might give your hopes and desires more clout. Firstly, have you made your plan too big? It's pointless saying, "I will be thin." Make it manageable, like dropping a dress size. That's a more surefire way to begin. Second, you might not be ready to switch. Watch this video on the cycle of change. Are you stuck in contemplation, preventing your growth from being long range? At number 3, what's your motivation? Is it external, based on what others said? "I want to look good" is not that powerful. Wouldn't you like to feel good instead? At 4, creating lasting change is hard, so make the habit a tiny one. Put the shoes on and go outside. That's the habit, not doing the run. 5 is that the pain is too great. It's much easier just to stay the same. So look for a resolution where staying the same would cause even more pain. 6 will seem pretty obvious. Choose something you like to do. Don't go to the gym if you already hate it. That's simply the wrong resolution for you. 7 is about self-sabotage and self-flagellation without self-compassion. Is there something in your history causing you to behave in this fashion? For this one, if the penny drops, that there's causes you might have missed, do yourself a massive favour and invest in a good therapist. We're near the end at number 8. Accountability might be new to you. Tell your friends and family or employ a coach to keep your course true. At number 9 are the previous obstacles that crop up time after time. Make a list and anticipate how to conquer these, and you'll be fine. My last suggestion is number 10. Are you tracking your progress? Use an app or keep a logbook, and soon you'll see your success. Please take the time to jot these down to help you reach the outcome you want. And when you compare them with your friends, your resolutions will be way out in front. Finally, consider how tough January is. You'd probably rather spend it in bed. So use this month to make your plans and start resolutions in February instead. Have you ever been told you have a big ego? Do you even really know what that is? Is it something that you are proud of, or do those words flatten your fizz? So what exactly is this concept, and what role does it play for you? Well, it's the conscious part of your mind. It's the I, the me, and the mine too. It's what causes us to act in self-interest, to look after ourselves as number one. And it sits between the id and the superego, which each pull us in a different direction. Now that the theory is out of the way, I want to share an example of insight where someone could have ego out of their ears, but instead took a backseat with delight. When I was a much younger man, which feels at least a lifetime ago, long before the birth of this here YouTube, and way before I knew about the ego, I used to love the sound of the guitar, especially the distorted, wailing cry. The likes of Joe Satriani, John Petrucci, Nuno, and of course, the irrepressible Steve Vai. Listening to the complex riffs they played made me want to do exactly the same, and I got my first guitar at 14, convinced I was bound for fortune and fame. Predictably, none of that stuff happened, and these days my guitars just gather dust. Occasionally when I see them hanging up, I think you should start again. You must. But now the music has become so complex that there's no way I could learn it. Perhaps I'm just more of a realist, and it's like my ego has died a bit. Take the band Polyphia, for example, which sounds a bit like a medical illness, and their guitarists Tim and Scotty, who exude utterly next-level brilliance. I've never heard anything like their scores, and I really mean everything I say. The licks they put out have been dubbed the most impossible guitar riffs to play. This band is something otherworldly. I'm glad they weren't around when I was a lad, because I'd probably have chucked my guitars away, and that thought really is quite sad. Anyway, despite them being one of the best, the most impressive and musically gifted, they released a music video quite recently, and my attitude towards them really shifted. I was watching their latest production, a mind-blowing song called Ego Death. The fretwork was blistering and melodic, and I thought they are truly blessed. But then something happened halfway. The camera rotated around a rooftop throne, and sitting there was old Steve Vai, and the video became about him alone. The tune he played truly floated, up to a place most will never reach, a lilting melody full of heavenly emotion, blue skies, open prairies, a deserted beach. The other musicians faded into the background, despite their immense skill and flair. All eyes, all cameras on the king, holding court on a rooftop bare. Now, I know Polyphia's getting something out of this, and I'm sure there's benefit for Steve too. But for them to have him on their video showed deference and respect through and through. It made me think a lot about our ego and the nonsense it often tells us, and why we need to rein it in, stopping it from making such a fuss. When we let our ego die just a little, we start to travel a higher path. We can take joy in the achievements of others, providing genuine praise and laughs. We are less likely to become jealous and be more honest in what we say. We crave external validation far less, no matter what metaphorical instrument we play. So while I know that I still have an ego, maybe I just need to be more aware of it, and now and again tell it to quieten down, occasionally ignoring it a little bit. Perhaps this was the video's purpose, or maybe it's just a cool collaboration, but it brought out overwhelm in me, mixed adoration and fascination. I know I'll never play a guitar like Steve. Those skills will never be in my possession, yet lacking these, him and Polyphia have still managed to teach me a lesson.
Hi everyone, Dr. Doodle Dad here. We're going to today talk about the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine and 6 well-being lifestyle hacks that you can use every day. I'll give you the ones I think are the most bang for your buck, so stay tuned. You might have seen recently I did a series of question and answers, a sort of question and answer session, and I've taken a bunch of what people said in the comments and hopefully I've managed to distill it down into one really useful lifestyle hack for each bit of lifestyle medicine, or each of the 6 pillars. So hopefully you'll find this helpful. Nutrition. What can you do to make your nutrition better? Well, my number one bit of advice that I give everyone is to remove refined carbohydrates out of your diet. And I would say the one that causes most of the problems, apart from sugar, is wheat. Refined wheat is really not very good for you. So cut that out. You'll hopefully feel an awful lot better. Your guts will be better. Your breathing will improve perhaps. Snoring might improve. Skin might improve. And everyone I have told that to who's actually done it for a few weeks has noticed some benefit. I'm yet to hear of someone who didn't have any benefit. So cut wheat out your diet if you want to have a very, very straightforward benefit from a nutritional point of view. What can I do for physical activity? Well, the simplest one, and the one that most people can do, is go for a walk. Being outside, being in nature, they're added bonuses, but going for a walk anywhere for any amount of time is valuable. It's very easy, you don't need any equipment, and it just ticks so many boxes on a well-being front. So my number one tip for physical activity is going for a walk. Sleep can be a problem for a lot of people. So my number one tip for how to get a better night's sleep and a bunch of other benefits is to go outside early in the morning. So set your alarm for when to go to bed so that you go to bed earlier than you would do normally, and get up early and get outside. Even if it's only for 10 or 15 minutes, you'll notice a huge amount of benefit. And if you can incorporate a walk and things like that as well, then it'll really do you a load of good. So tip for sleep, get up early and go outside. Stress management. Everyone is stressed. So my top tip for how to deal with stress is to take up a hobby. Loads of people said that on the recent videos about how to manage your stress. That was probably the best comment, or the most common comment. So get a hobby, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's physical, like running, and it doesn't matter if it's creative, like art or painting. Just get a hobby, do a lot of it, try and incorporate a bit of mindfulness, and you will find your stress is an awful lot better. So that's my tip for how to deal with stress. Avoiding toxic substances and toxic behaviours. Well, those seem pretty obvious. Don't smoke, don't drink too much, and don't gamble and things like that. But my top tip for that one is to actually avoid toxic people. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you get yourself a bit of paper and you write down the top 10 people that you spend time with on a weekly basis, and next to them write, does this person empty me or do they fill me up? And if you feel full by being in someone's company and energized, then spend more time with them. If they empty you and they make you feel miserable and afterwards you think that was such a chore, spend less time with them. So my top tip for managing toxic behaviors, substances and people is to avoid those people. And that's a way I would suggest you do it. Social connection. Social connection is so important. I've mentioned it so many times. I keep referring to the Harvard study of adult development, which showed that people who were happiest in their 80s were the same people that had the best friendships in their 50s. So make sure you have plenty of social connection. And my top tip for getting that is to join a club. It can be anything. It could be an archery club, it could be a photography club. It doesn't matter. You'll meet people who've got like-minded views on things, folk that you can connect with, people that you can form friendships with. So that would be my top tip for developing increased social connection. Okay, so
I hope you found those 6 tips useful. I certainly try to employ most of those in my day-to-day. I hope that you'll share some of those with other people. And if you do have any top tips of your own, or things that you like to do, or things that someone might never have heard of, then please put them in the comments below, and I look forward to reading them. I do read every comment. I reply to every single one if I can, and if not, I'll still give you a thumbs up. I don't think I've ever given a thumbs down, but there's always a first. Anyway, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.
How much of your life have you spent wishing for things to change, I ask, but then wondering why for years nothing you want seems to come to pass? It is really a common situation for people to garner hope, you see. But in today's poem, I'll tell you why hope is a completely useless strategy. Hope is a terribly biased ideal, a relentless feeling for something more, constantly driving fantasies and desire, showing facts and logic the door. It sets us up for disappointment and crushes our expectation. It prevents a flexible thinking mindset and hampers sensible preparation. It's a bit like praying for something to happen instead of wrangling control and working hard for an outcome that takes you to your desired goal. I could go on more about this, but Nietzsche's words do more than I can. Hope is in reality the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torment of man. What can I do instead of hope, you ask? Well, first, don't complain or mope. Get to formulating a decent plan, which is the antithesis of hope. If you simply write down what you want, your will to see it happen will cement. And the science really backs this up. Chances of success go up by 42%. Productivity increases when you make a plan and stops you wasting your time. It makes you a lot more focused, and up the achievement ladder you will climb. Your confidence grows as you accomplish more, and the more effective you will become. It doesn't really matter what you're planning for, starting a business or completing a run. So as it's the new year, I'm sure, you've all got aspirational resolutions. How are you going to make these happen? What would be a useful and helpful solution? Have you heard of SMART objectives? This is one of many tools to make a plan. So when things are not going your way, use this to turn I can't into I can. S needs you to make things specific. This is the who, what, why, when and where. What will define success, and what actions are you willing to take to get you there? A reminds us to make things achievable. Are your skills sufficiently evolved? And if you are unable to acquire them, do you need to get someone else involved? R is asking you to make sure it's relevant. Is this something you really believe in? Does it meet with your larger ambitions and align with the values you hold within? Time bound is the T in this acronym, which should push you to get a move on. But also you need to have deadlines to alert you to when things have gone on too long. With all that in mind, you just need to start. What is it that you want to accomplish? Make a plan and then make it happen. Wishful thinking you need to abolish. You could just learn to be more content in life. But if you want the new job or the flat tummy, remember what I said at the start of this rhyme. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah!